All right, today we are heading deep into the Nevada desert, to a place that honestly lives in this really weird space between modern folklore and some pretty stark military reality. Of course, I'm talking about Area 51. So, what is it that pulls people all the way out to the edge of this forbidden zone? And maybe more importantly, what actually happens when they get there?
Let's just start right at the perimeter, with the words of someone who actually made the trip. This quote, it just nails the whole thing, doesn't it? It perfectly captures why people go, that feeling of being right on the edge of a secret, of kind of pushing against a boundary that you know is going to push back. It's a thrill people will literally travel across the entire world to experience.
And I'm not kidding, they really do travel across the world. This whole story comes from an Australian couple who, for their very first trip to the United States, decided a normal vacation just wasn't going to cut it. Nope. Their #1 bucket list item? Camping on the fence line of Area 51.
And look, this was not just some quick selfie stop. They were all in. They rented a Jeep with a tent on the roof and spent 3 full nights just exploring the area. They went to multiple gates, they soaked in the local culture at the famous little Allure. They really wanted to immerse themselves in the whole environment.
So, it was on their second night, camped out at a spot overlooking one of the dates, that their little adventure went from sightseeing to a very direct and very, very strange form of communication with the base's infamous security guys, known to everyone out there as the Camo Dudes.
So picture this. As they're setting up camp, the Camo Dudes roll up in their truck. They park right by the gate, and they just watch. That's it. This wasn't some big, immediate confrontation. It was the start of a long, quiet, and deeply surreal game of cat and mouse under the desert sky.
Then, around 9:45 p.m., the desert silence was just shattered. For an hour and a half straight, the guards blasted this incredibly loud siren, or maybe a constant horn aimed directly at their campsite. This wasn't a warning, this was a deliberate act of psychological harassment, designed to do one thing: make them as uncomfortable as possible.
And you think that's it? Oh no, then it got even weirder. After the siren finally stopped, a second truck showed up. One of the vehicles moved closer and just started blasting what they described as instrumental classic rock at them. And this went on until 3 in the morning. I mean, the tactics are so bizarre, right? They're completely nonviolent, and they're designed simply to make you want to pack up and leave.
But it's not just about getting right up to the fence. The secrecy of this place pushes other people to go to absolutely incredible lengths just to get a tiny glimpse from a distance. It really proves there's more than one way to watch the watchers.
And right here, you can really see the two faces of the base. It's like 2 different worlds. On one hand, you've got the official, kind of boring, bureaucratic seal of the Air Combat Command. And on the other, you have these stark, intimidating signs that greet anyone who gets even remotely close. It's this exact contrast that fuels that desire to see what's behind them.
Now, to get that view, you have got to work for it. A pair of investigators named Tim and Tracy Doyle undertook this absolutely grueling hike. They climbed 8,000 feet up Tikaboo Peak, which is one of the last public spots where you can see anything, to a spot that's still 25 miles away from the base. And from there, using a super powerful telescope and camera, they managed to capture some of the clearest public photos of the facility that exist.
Okay, so we've seen what happens when you camp on public land near the line. But what happens when that curiosity, or let's be honest, the desire for some viral content, pushes people to actually step over it?
Well, back in 2019, 2 Dutch YouTubers decided they were going to find out. They blew right past the giant no trespassing signs and drove their car 3 miles into the restricted Nevada National Security Site. And when they were finally stopped, they had a laptop, a camera, a drone. They weren't just lost tourists, they were on a mission to get footage.
And the takeaway here could not be clearer. That line in the sand is not imaginary. For the campers on public land, the result was a really weird, sleepless night of sirens and rock music. For the YouTubers who crossed onto federal land, the result was immediate arrest, their car and all their gear seized, and a hefty fine. The games stop the second you trespass.
All right, so let's pull back from these individual stories for a second and look at the official reality. To really understand why that perimeter is guarded so intensely, we need to understand what this place actually is, and we can do that by looking at the U.S. Air Force's own documents. First things first, forget Area 51. Officially, it's the Nevada Test and Training Range, or NTTR, and its purpose has nothing to do with aliens. It's designed to be the country's biggest and most advanced military playground. We're talking 2.9 million acres of land, a huge, instrumented battle space for developing and practicing the art of war.
This map, which is from the Air Force Manual, is incredible. It reveals that what looks like just empty desert to a tourist is in fact a meticulously organized chessboard. It's all carved up into dozens of specific sub-ranges and restricted zones, and each one is managed for complex and often simultaneous military operations.
And this hierarchy of priorities really shows you just how serious that business is. I mean, at the very top, you've got the Department of Energy and National Nuclear Security Activities. And then way down at the bottom, at number 11, you finally see commercial uses. This is a resource so valuable that its schedule is literally a matter of national security.
So after looking at all this, the personal stories on one side, the official documents on the other, what are we left with? Well, it seems we have two totally distinct, yet completely connected realities. There's the myth that draws people in, and then there's the manual that explains exactly why they have to be kept out. Ultimately, the experience of those adventurers at the fence line, the sirens, the weird music, the silent surveillance, that's all a direct consequence of the reality that's happening just beyond it. These bizarre psychological games exist because it's a highly structured military chessboard where the nation's most advanced and secret warfighting tech is being built and tested. You simply can't have one without the other.
And that really leaves us with one final question. Knowing that the truth behind the fence isn't aliens, but is actually the absolute bleeding edge of military technology and training, does that make the mystery of Area 51 more powerful or less? Something to think about. Thanks for watching.